Hey everyone, welcome to the High Performance Health Podcast. I'm here with the guys. We've got we're going to a slightly different approach today. We've actually brought in one of the clients. This is Chris. I've been working with Chris for the last few months. One thing that I wanted to dive into and talk a little bit more about today, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of the guys who are working with our clients come across the same problems and the same sort of issues that you guys have who are traveling so much, is conference life. So talk to me, Chris, a little bit more what conferences like, kind of how often they happen, and how it pulls you away from your regular schedule in terms of, getting to the gym to train. Alcohol consumption goes up, sleep deprivation, I'm sure, and just the ability to be in control of the food that you're eating as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I, so to answer your first question, how often it happens, it's probably 3, 4 times a year, somewhere in that range. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, at least in my role. But I'm very heavily focused in sales and customer facing. So for me, when we go to these events, it's usually somewhere in the range of like 72 to 96 hours, almost a full week virtually of just being on from 6 in the morning till we get back to the hotel room at midnight or somewhere in that range. And what that usually entails is you get there, you have to go through registration, and then you just start networking. And then it's just constant virtual, face-to-face networking. Usually, as I'm customer facing, I'm at a booth if we're a sponsor. So anybody that's walking by, anybody that I'm just trying to engage with as many people as possible, trying to facilitate conversations, understand what they do, understand why they're at this particular conference. So being that I'm in IT sales, it's like, great, what are your problems? Why are you here? What are you trying to learn? What are you trying to get out of this? What's your motivation? And that'll carry through the whole day. I'm usually at the booth somewhere around 8 to 10 hours, straight. There's usually a high level of caffeine intake during the day. And then you have a lunch break, and then you have to again go sit down with people you don't know and try to facilitate conversations, try to understand what's their motivation for being here. And then once you get to, let's say everybody starts winding down around 4:30. Well, then guess what? Then it's happy hour. And then everybody, they usually have a big group happy hour. It's a networking thing. So I was actually just in Vegas. So you had the happy hour for the event, and then after that they had a sponsored happy hour. And then so you go to this, and I was invited because I happen to network with these people. So then go and do this sponsored happy hour, do some more networking. And by then it's like 7, 8 o'clock. Then it's dinner time. And then you have to grab as many folks as you can, whether it's business peers or people you met at the conference, take them out and do the whole wine and dine and get to know them more on a personal level. If I'm inviting clients or prospects or anybody to dinner, I try to actually avoid business at that point and really just try to communicate at a personal level, get to know how they work, what drives them, what's their life about, family, kids, what they enjoy doing. And then, for example, I was in Vegas, and then that turned into me messaging James at, I don't know, 3 in the morning, said I'm not going to make our 6 a.m. call because I'm calling it a night
When
flight
in
event.
Vegas, when in Vegas.
Yeah, that is not a normal thing. That's a Vegas conference, but really, it's been pretty much that for me at conferences where you're just going for 14-hour days at least, and you're just have to be on, have to be present. You kind of push all the other work, family, everything aside because at these conferences, for example, this is why it's so important. One of the biggest conferences I ever went to, we ended up closing out of that conference $18 million in business. That changed the trajectory of my career. That changed the trajectory of my family, really. So it's extremely important to be as invested in it as possible because that's where I will make the most impact. Sorry, that was
Yeah.
a lot.
No, no, that
No,
was great. That was great.
Great insight, Chris. Just for my own selfish understanding as well. I mean, what have you guys done to help stay on track throughout that? I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that's going to be a similar cadence. It's going to be a similar. It sounds like a quarterly thing for yourself, Chris. What have you guys done to help manage that? Because it sounds realistically completely full on. What would you recommend to people listening? What have you guys done together, James and Chris, to help make things work there?
I think for me, setting a realistic target for Chris is from the pressures that come with the job and that have to be his and have to be theirs. Exercise is kind of out the window. I think it's more about sort of creating a bit more of a damage limitation. Now, I don't think I was present on the 3 a.m. in Las Vegas in a nightclub in a bar conversation, but it's about damage limitation. So we can look at certain things like Chris is going to be on his feet all day, right? You're going to be walking around a lot. First of all, we know we're covering a large amount of ground in terms of increasing your total daily energy expenditure. So the amount of calories that we burn throughout the day. We also kind of deep dive, don't we, into sort of alcohol. What if these business deals are going to come with social lubricants, right? That being alcohol, we know people are going to drink. There's no point in trying to look away from that. What can we drink in terms of alcohol that's the lowest amount of calories? Can we look at drinking things like a gin or a vodka? Can we look at working with light mixes and things like that? So that's kind of the approach that I have with a lot of my guys in terms of alcohol activity, and then making smart choices when it comes to food. Creating that calorie buffer in the morning, going for the healthier options that you can when you can, where they're available.
What's been some of the things that have helped keep you on track, Chris, on those events or on those weeks? And how do you get yourself going again after as well? Because I imagine it's tough coming off of 4 days back to back, especially in Vegas.
Extremely
Having just
difficult.
having just spent 2 weeks there and drank more in the 2 weeks than I had done in 6 months, I understand where you're coming from. So, what's been helpful for you to mitigate some of the damage and to get going again as well?
Yeah, I will. I'll say with James, I'll concur. It's making healthier choices while you're there. So try to limit, black coffee in the morning, and then try to make it through to lunch, or have protein bars. So I pack protein, these
Yeah.
protein one bars with me while there, right? So that I can at least satisfy a little bit of hunger while we're waiting on the lunch option, which hopefully is like a salad or something I can choose from. Sometimes that's limited. But then going back to your question about, how do we get back on track? I mean, it's a struggle for me. That's what I struggle with, is really trying to, um, I'm a creature of habit. So if I'm on a good routine, then I
Both.
work really well. And then if I, go on these trips or vacation or anything, I do struggle to get back on track. That's just me personally. But making sure that you get back, set that alarm. I think that's a big thing. Get that done in the morning so you don't have distractions. Again, I've been struggling with that personally as of late, but working towards improving on that. Having those healthy options at home and trying to avoid any takeout or delivery or anything like that. We're typically pretty good about that, but I think it is a challenge. And so it's just really being committed to yourself and committed to your coach, and having those check-ins and making sure uh, owning it a bit, right? Like James and I have had conversations where, look, man, I'm having a hard time right now. I'm struggling because of all this work, travel, and things. How do we work together? And I'll take full ownership of that. It's been, for me, this has been a great journey, but it's not all just successes. I've had road bumps, and I continue to. So that's why, we're going to continue to work through that.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that either, Chris, in terms of the routine. I mean, you obviously mentioned that's what you kind of come up against, but I think that's very much human nature. When you're thrown off course, it's often the conversations that I have on the first call with people. It's like, Yeah, I went to a conference 3 years ago and I just lost my steam. Or it was a vacation or over the holiday period or, something like that. And it's like, yeah, I just haven't done anything for 18 months. So I think for yourself, identifying the alarm, on the first day of getting that first workout in or first walk or whatever it is, after being out of routine, I don't think that's something that you should even think about skipping over. Like, I think that's ultimately one of the most important parts, because once you get the first one going, it becomes easier. Life always gets easier after the first one's out of the way, especially after a break like that. And again, for the up and down side of things, I mean, the guys have all worked with hundreds of clients throughout their lifetime, and I can say this with certainty that there's not a single person who I have ever worked with who had a straight line down like this. In
Yeah.
terms of their weight or in terms of their progress, or there's nothing straight. It's always like this. And it just hopefully goes in the right direction over time. So yeah, again, not alone there. Any specific questions you guys have, or anything, James, as well?
I have more, but guys, feel free to jump in
Yeah,
if you have
please,
anything that you specifically
please
want
go
to
for
talk about. No, three frozen places. Talk to me, Chris, a little bit about like the food when you're on these conferences as well. I know, I've been in coach for the last 20 years. I've worked with lots of professional people. I spent 11 years working in the financial district in London. I know what it's like. I've heard it kind of firsthand, time and time and time again. But when it comes to the food, are you able to control the food that you're consuming, or is it one of these, this is prepared for you, this is prepared for you, this is prepared for you? And if it is, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's the latter for sure.
Yeah.
Every meal is typically you have options, but it's usually one to two, three options maybe. So sometimes, lunches, it's like you can do a salad or like a boxed lunch salad with, a bunch of other junk in there, which I avoid, or a sandwich. And so it's really like, what can I grab and eat within 10 minutes, so I can be back and focused on leading
Yeah.
these conversations. And then when you go to, then the happy hours, they'll have past hors d'oeuvres or something, right? And those are pretty much have to avoid those entirely. There's not really any good options there when it comes to like fried shrimp or, uh, anything like that. And then dinners, it's usually group dinners, and you're really kind of limited to, all right, the steak, the fish, the chicken, or something like that. So really try to make the best choice possible. You don't really have options outside of that, and you're there with a group of people, so you just kind of roll with the punches, or at least that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
The one thing that I've always found as well from conferences and from clients going out to dinners with clients and stuff like that is, we live in this society, I find, where the three-course meal is kind of still a thing. I don't know why it's still a thing, but people say to me, well, I had to have the bread because it was there, and then I had this for dessert starter and this for entree and this for dessert. And do you have control over that as well, or are you one of those people that's like, well, they gave all three, so I had all three, or can you be like, no thanks, I'm actually going to pass on that?
Yeah, I'm thankfully not, I don't succumb to that personally. I
Good.
say, this is my meal, and I'm 42 now, man. I can't eat like I used to, just in general. I have a meal and I'm set. I don't do desserts. I don't do that, typically speaking, because I just feel like garbage afterward. Um, so it's usually just, hey, I'll have the chicken or fish or sometimes steak and go with that, and that's more than enough. I usually don't even finish the full plate.
Yeah.
Can
I
I
think,
um can I just ask Chris
yeah,
a really quick question? I think just specifically with his situation, where obviously, like you said, it's a lot of customer facing and it's a lot of sales, and I would imagine that a lot of sales comes from getting business. Ultimately, is they have to like you, and ultimately
Oh
that's
yeah.
what I guess what the networking is all about. So if you don't have a connection with them, if they don't enjoy being in your company, I'm guessing there's less chance of you getting their business. And so does that change how you act, or is it easier to then, if they're, yeah, let's get all the sides, let's get all the appetizers, let's get desserts, let's get loads of trays of drinks. Is it easier for you to still be like, actually, I'm on a diet, I can't? Or do you have to be a bit more like, oh, okay, I have to kind of go with this because I have to be, creating that connection? Or does it, so basically, how easy or difficult is it depending on the customer basically that you're trying to network with?
Yeah, that's a great point. Depending on the customer, there are the customers that are like, hey, you're taking me out, then checkbook is open. It's just open credit card, and they'll order and we'll order whatever. I typically avoid it still. I may try a little bite of this, a little bite of that. Again, I can't do all that and still be on point personally. So that's not a problem for me, but I certainly can see it. I'm more personally, it's going to be, hey, let's go have drinks. Let's go have after this. What are we doing? And I will. I don't instigate that, but I'm not going to say no either. So that's where I run into trouble, where it's like, okay, now we're doing after dinner drinks and so on, and then I cancel meetings in the morning with James.
At 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think what you outlined, Chris, is a pretty good framework to think through as well. You mentioned doing the fasting in the morning, like having a bit of black coffee, just having a couple of things, protein bars to hand.
Or
That's
I'll
sort
just
of,
grab a banana, because if you're at a hotel, like they'll have bananas, or so I'll do, okay, black coffee and a banana, and that'll at least keep me, satiated until lunch.
100%. It's like, well, where can you control things as much as possible? And it's going to be that first half of the day. And as you said, if you do get a lunch option, trying to pick the best option. When it comes to the dinner meal, maybe it's again just trying to minimize the courses there more than anything. And on the drink side, yeah, it's always going to happen. I think the important part is getting things going again for me. And just focusing on, as you said, short damage limitation. Pav, you've got a question.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Chris. I know James mentioned that obviously workouts are off the table, but do you find any time whatsoever to do any activities at all other than obviously, walking around the maybe conference room and stuff like that, whether it's bodyweight workout or early gym in the morning or go for a run after or anything along these lines?
It depends on the conference. So I would say for example, the one I was in Vegas, the answer is no. I mean, we were a sponsor there. We were every minute of the day, we had a schedule. That's the other part. A lot of that is not up to me. They just say, here's the schedule. This is where you're supposed to be, and this is what you're supposed to be doing for the next 14 hours. I mean, we're talking minute by minute. So by the time that ends, you have to be an extraordinarily strong-willed person to then get up the next morning and be ready to go exercise. Unfortunately, I'm not that committed in that sense. I still need to get some sleep and get back to it the next day. But there are conferences that aren't, micromanaged to that extent where you can get up and go exercise and that sort of thing. But I mean, I think in Vegas, I was averaging 7 or 8 miles of walking a day just because I was on my feet the whole time. Walking in the conference areas are absolutely gigantic. So you're just walking around and staying on your feet. So I think that mitigates it to a degree, but at that style of conference, I have another one coming in October. There's just it's minute by minute planned out for you.
Yeah, I mean,
Cheers.
the honest reality for us as coaches as well is to accept the fact that you're going there to probably like you said. I mean, there's a conference there that completely changed the trajectory of your career. Like the goal is probably to focus on that when you're there, and everything else can fall into the background as long as we get going again. That's ultimately, I think, the frame for us to think through as coaches as well.
The most important thing for me, I think,
I've just got a quick question as well.
Go on, you jump in.
No, go on. Sorry, James.
Okay.
Go on.
The most important thing for me, and I think with Chris and working with lots of people like yourself, Chris, going forwards is my main aim for all of you is to understand what you're putting in your bodies, because there will be times in your life like this, for example, where your exercise is off the table. 7 to 8 miles a day of walking is huge. We all know that that's massively important. when it comes to your daily energy expenditure. I think starting to learn about the food that you're putting in your body will give you so much more of an advantage when it comes to weight loss and being successful. I just wanted to bring up one point. I was actually going to do a post on this. Me and my wife were in a cafe yesterday, and I walked out and it was "Good mornings made better," and it was a picture of a butter croissant with a flat white. 250 calories in the croissant and 189 in the flat white. That's 439 calories that you would do like that without even thinking about it. You know, if you can just change the mindset of walking away from the pastries and having the black coffee and the banana, there's going to be about 107 calories. To me, you're winning. You're winning that battle straight away. We know that you're going to spend a little bit more on alcohol later on. We know that that's going to happen. But making those decisions, because how many times have you walked into a coffee shop and ordered that flat white and that pastry? For me, that's the one thing like that I absolutely have to stay away from, because the amount of calories you can save yourself, not only on a day, but over a week, over a month, over a year, that's a huge amount of calories that you can then go and spend later. So I think a couple of things I would always say: watch the calories, be sensible where you can, and also my non-negotiable, weigh yourself as soon as you get back. Hold your hands up and say, "This is where I am now." I think avoiding that, and I know that I've spoken to you about this on our calls, getting on the scales and saying, "I fucked up, I put on 5 pounds." Okay, cool, we can work with that. But not knowing that, then you're just kind of walking blind, aren't you, going forwards?
Yeah.
Go on, David, jump in.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for jumping on.
Sure.
My question is more about the organisation you work for. Do they have any support network or groups about wellness and kind of, I'm just thinking on a larger scale, when you have a group of you in the same boat, do they reach out sometimes for these events and help out in any sort of way, physically or psychologically?
So we are a European-based organization that is now moving into the US. So we're still very early in stages in the US as far as infrastructure support, that sort of stuff. I would venture a guess that the European side of it has a lot more infrastructure and support around those kind of things. Here in the US, it's a cultural thing for us. You're there to work, and the expectation is that that's what you're doing. And really you kind of make the sacrifices hoping that you get the benefit of closing the deal, or anything else for that matter, finding these opportunities, networking, making partnerships, that sort of stuff. That's just the name of the game, at least for my organization. There's probably other ones that handle it a little bit better. But being that we're so new in the US market, it's not really any support in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, because that's what we're up against a lot, is that the
It's
organisation itself will do tend to, depending on who the owner is of the organisation and the framework, will tend to have their own initiatives to help. And a lot of people will be in your position. Some of them won't have the online coaching that you've got the privy to have. But population strategy is also powerful as well. So if you've got people around you that are in a similar boat, and the organisation can have initiatives to help with the food intake, with all these things, that's where it becomes a quite powerful strategy. But I know full well that not many owners want to care about anything else other than profit margins. So that's what we're up against as well. So
Especially
thanks
in
for
the sales organization, that's what it comes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I get that. But thanks for the response. Yeah.
Well,
sure.
I think we've taken enough of your time this morning, Chris. I appreciate it's still early on where you are as well. So really, really appreciate you hopping on this morning, and sharing some of your time with us, and sharing an insight, and hopefully some people listening took some value as well. Any sort of final thoughts for yourself, James, or anything like that, guys?
No, nothing from me, Chris. That was great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll see you on our call next week as well. Good.
Yeah,
Looking forward to
absolutely
get back
great
on it.
to meet everybody. I enjoyed it, so I'm happy to do it again if ever there's a good, content that we can put out. So thanks again.
100%.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.